Welcome, sleepy one. I'll be your storyteller tonight. Before we begin, please like and subscribe for more bedtime stories. Let me know in the comments where you're watching from. And now, close your eyes. Let's begin. I had just turned 26 when I moved to New York, January 2011. I still remember how the wind cut through the city that winter, sharp, metallic, like it carried blades. It slipped through every crack in my new Murray Hill apartment, whistling through the peeling walls and the warped window frames. The radiator clanged all night, coughing steam but giving off little warmth. It wasn't much, just a cramped one-bedroom with faded wallpaper and floors that creaked with every step. But it was mine. My first real place, my first real start. For me, it was proof that I wasn't some small-town nobody from Rochester anymore, that I'd made it here, that I was finally becoming the person I'd imagined I'd be. My name is Daniel Mercer, and this story was supposed to be about success, about rising above the noise and making something of myself. But it isn't. It's about how easy it is to be seduced by power, and how quietly you can lose the one thing you thought was untouchable: yourself. I'd just landed a job at Hartman & Row Estates, one of those sleek marble and glass real estate firms that didn't deal in houses or condos. They sold dreams, private islands, ancient European estates, penthouses that scraped clouds, homes for people who didn't even live in the same world as the rest of us. On my first day, the office buzzed like a live wire. Whispers flew about a record-breaking deal. A medieval castle in Switzerland sold to some 20-something tech billionaire. I had nothing to do with it, of course. I was the new kid, still trying to remember the coffee code and the copier password. But everyone was high on it, like they'd all gotten a taste of the billionaire's success. Even Victor Hartman himself came out of his glass-walled office a few times that week. He wasn't the kind of man you forgot. Huge, round-shouldered, his gut stretching against his custom Italian suits, his voice thick with cigar smoke despite the no-smoking signs plastered everywhere. His laugh could shake the windows. His glare could turn a person to dust. On Friday afternoon, the place was buzzing, people planning some kind of celebratory dinner at a private venue. I figured I'd go home unseen, like always, but just as I was shutting down my computer, Hartman lumbered into my tiny corner office. He closed the door behind him, the hinges groaning, and stood there, filling the doorway like a dark tower. "You're Mercer, right?" His voice was gravelly, heavy with the weight of whiskey and authority. "Yes, sir," I said, forcing a smile. He chewed on a half-burnt cigar, grinning. "Good week?" "It's been great," I said quickly. "I'm still trying to keep up, honestly," Hartman chuckled, the sound deep and knowing.
"Keep up, huh?"
"You'll do fine." Then he leaned closer, his breath thick with tobacco. "Tell me something."
Ever had salami stuck between your teeth? The kind no floss can reach?
I blinked, unsure if I'd misheard. Yeah, I guess. A couple times. He dug at his teeth with his pinky, then gave a small, satisfied nod. Annoying as hell, isn't it? But the right tools fix anything. Before I could respond, he tugged at one of his cufflinks and held it out to me. I hesitated, then took it. The gold piece was heavy, square, engraved with the letter V, and beneath it a finely carved scythe. It caught the light in a strange way, gleaming almost too bright. "Beautiful craftsmanship," I said, trying to sound composed. "Custom," he muttered. "Like all good things. Everything worthwhile in this world is built in secret. Remember that, boy?" He slipped the cufflink back into place, his thick fingers moving with surprising precision. Then he handed me a business card, thick, off-white, embossed with the same scythe symbol. "We're celebrating tonight," he said. "You'll come?" I turned the card over. On the back, in elegant black script, was a single word: Maïna. "What's this?" I asked. "The password," he said simply. "No password, no entry." And then he was gone, just like that, leaving behind the smell of cigar smoke and something else. Something sweet and faintly metallic that I couldn't place. By the time the day ended, my nerves were fried. I must have read that card 20 times on the subway ride home, mouthing the word Maïna under my breath, wondering what it meant. It sounded foreign, ancient, like a word that shouldn't exist anymore. Back in my apartment, I showered, shaved, and put on the only decent suit I owned. My stomach twisted with something I couldn't quite name, part excitement, part dread. It didn't feel like just a dinner. It felt like an initiation. The address led me to a quiet block near the East River, where the streetlights flickered and the wind carried the smell of salt and rust. Between two boarded-up storefronts, I found a narrow metal door, paint flaking off in strips. There was no sign, no nameplate, just the faint echo of low music vibrating through the wall. I knocked. After a pause, a sliding panel scraped open at eye level, revealing a pair of bloodshot eyes, sharp, assessing, unblinking. "Yes?" the man behind the slit asked, his voice a low rasp that scraped the silence. "I'm here for the dinner," I said, trying to sound sure of myself even as my throat tightened. "Password." "Mina," the lock clicked, metal grinding on metal. The door creaked open just enough to let me through, revealing nothing but a narrow stairwell spiraling down into complete darkness. When I turned to look for the man, he was gone. Vanished, as if the shadows had swallowed him whole. I stood at the top of the steps for a long moment, my breath clouding in the chill air. Then I descended. Each step groaned under my shoes, the sound echoing like a heartbeat. The deeper I went, the colder it became. The air grew damp, heavy, and thick with the smell of mildew and iron. I felt like I was walking into the throat of something ancient. My hand brushed along the wall. It was rough stone, slick with moisture. When I finally reached the bottom, I found a wooden door waiting in the gloom, its grain darkened with age. From the other side came muffled voices, soft laughter, murmurs, the clink of glass. Then silence. I hesitated before knocking. The voices stopped entirely. "Who is it?" a deep voice demanded. "Daniel Mercer," I said quickly, my mouth dry. "The new associate at Hartman and Rowe." A pause. Then the door opened. What I stepped into didn't feel like New York anymore. The room beyond was carved from stone, circular, with low ceilings that seemed to press the air down. The smell hit me first, incense thick as smoke mixed with something sharper, metallic. Later I'd realize it was blood. Candles flickered on iron stands, their wax bleeding down like melting bones. Shadows twisted across the walls, dancing over carvings that looked older than the city itself. At the center stood a statue, an owl or something pretending to be one. Its body was carved from black stone, wings outstretched, but its beak was gone, replaced by jagged teeth. Its eyes were hollow pits, and two horns jutted from its skull like those of a ram. Around it stood my colleagues. I recognized them even behind the masks, ornate Venetian disguises of gold, silver, and feathers that shimmered in the candlelight. Some laughed softly, others stood motionless, watching. At the front of the group stood Hartman. His voice boomed behind a long curved mask. "Welcome, Mercer," he said. "Tonight you cross the threshold." I froze, my heart pounding. "Threshold of what?" He didn't answer. Instead, he reached out and handed me a knife. Its handle was wrapped in dark leather. Its blade gleamed like a mirror catching firelight. "Every one of us has given to Maina," he said, his tone reverent. "She gives back tenfold. Wealth, power, protection. All she asks is blood." The others murmured in agreement, voices blending into something that felt like wind howling through stone. This is a joke, right?" I managed to stammer. My hands were trembling. Hartman's mask tilted. Then slowly he removed it. His face was red, slick with sweat, his eyes sharp and cold. "Do I look like I'm joking, kid?" A low sound began around me, chanting, guttural and rhythmic. It started as a whisper, then grew, vibrating in my chest. The words meant nothing, but they made the air hum like an engine. Hands pressed against my back, urging me forward. Hartman stepped closer, pressing the knife into my palm. "Just a cut," he said softly. "Enough to show loyalty." Do it," he barked. The chanting rose, filling the room, pounding in my skull. The air itself felt alive. I could hardly breathe. My hand shook violently as I lifted the blade, and against every instinct screaming inside me, I drew it across my palm. Blood welled up instantly, warm and bright. It dripped down onto the statue's head, hissing as it touched the stone. And then everything changed. The air turned sharp, electric. The candles flickered wildly, their flames bending inward. I felt something slide through me, not over my skin, but inside it. Like claws dragging through my soul, searching, tearing. My chest seized. I couldn't breathe. My mind blurred into static. It was as if a piece of me had been yanked out and tossed into the dark. What's happening?" I gasped, stumbling backward. Hartman's voice was calm now, almost kind. "That emptiness you feel," he said, "that's the price. You'll never go hungry. You'll never be weak. But the part of you that doubts, that fears, It belongs to her now. I wanted to scream, to run, to tear my skin open just to get whatever was inside of me out. But the numbness spreading through me was worse than fear. I felt hollow, detached, like I was watching myself from across the room. The chanting stopped. The silence that followed was suffocating. Hartman smiled faintly. "Welcome to the order, Mercer." The years that followed were everything I thought I wanted. I rose fast in the firm, too fast. I closed deals that should have been impossible, negotiated sales that made headlines. I bought a loft in Tribeca, a car whose name I couldn't pronounce, traveled to cities I'd only seen on postcards as a kid. But I was empty. Laughter felt mechanical, like I was reading from a script. Food was tasteless. Every woman I met, every friend I made, it all felt distant, like I was watching life through glass. I played my part, but the spark that made me me was gone. Sometimes in the quiet of night I'd hear it, a soft hoot echoing inside my skull, high and shrill, like the owl was calling for me. I tried everything, therapists, priests, doctors. None of them could name what was wrong. None believed me when I said I'd given something away that night underground. It's been over a decade since then. I'm writing this because I can't keep pretending. I've built everything I thought mattered, and it means nothing. I'm just a shell moving through a world that no longer feels real. My soul, or whatever part of it I lost, never came back. If anyone ever reads this, listen to me. There are doors in New York that don't exist on any map. Places hidden between walls, beneath streets, waiting for someone curious enough to knock. If someone hands you a card with a word you can't understand, burn it. Run. Because once you give yourself away, you don't get it back. Not for money. Not for power. Not for anything. I'm living proof of that. And if one night you hear an owl hoot in the dark, pray it isn't calling for you. I always thought New York City would feel like a movie the moment I stepped into it. Growing up in Gothenburg, Sweden, I'd stay up late watching American films, those glowing skylines, the fast-talking locals, the endless blur of yellow taxis, and that electric promise that something extraordinary could happen around any corner. For years, I told myself, one day I'll go there. One day I'll see it with my own eyes. That day finally came in the spring of 2018. I'd saved for almost 2 years, working double shifts at a small cafe and tutoring English to restless teenagers after school. My mom worried about me traveling alone, but I was 24, restless, ambitious, and desperate to chase the version of myself I thought waited somewhere across the Atlantic. The flight from Stockholm to New York was long and claustrophobic. 9 hours cramped between strangers, my knees pressed against the seat in front of me. But when the plane began its descent and the skyline came into view, all fatigue dissolved. There it was, the Empire State Building stabbing into the clouds, the clustered towers of Manhattan glittering like glass teeth, even the faint silhouette of the Statue of Liberty off in the haze. It didn't feel real. I pressed my face to the window like a kid. "First time in the States?" asked the older woman beside me. "Yes," I said, unable to stop smiling. "It's something, isn't it?" she said, then returned to her magazine with the calm of someone who'd seen it all before. For me, though, it was impossible to calm down. LaGuardia was chaos incarnate, voices in dozens of languages echoing off the walls, luggage carts squeaking, children crying, people rushing like they all had somewhere more important to be. I clutched my backpack tight to my chest, my passport tucked into the side pocket just like Dad had warned me on the phone before I left. "Always keep your documents on you. Don't let them out of sight, Clara." I'd booked a cheap hostel in Queens. Couldn't afford downtown, but the reviews said it was safe. A little noisy but friendly. That was good enough. I was too giddy to care about noise. Outside, a long line of yellow cabs shimmered under the hazy evening light. It looked exactly like the movies. I laughed to myself, dragging my suitcase across the pavement. "Taxi?" A tall man in a faded cap called, waving me over. "Yes, please," I said, trying to sound confident. He grabbed my suitcase and tossed it into the trunk, then opened the back door. "Where to?" "Queens," I said, scrolling through my phone. "I can give you the exact address." He nodded, pulled into traffic, and glanced at me through the rearview mirror. "You visiting?" "Yes, from Sweden." "Sweden, huh? His tone was flat. Never heard of it. I gave a quick, nervous laugh, waiting for a smile that never came. His expression didn't change, no amusement, no curiosity. Just that steady, unreadable stare that lingered too long before he turned back to the road. A strange chill crept into my stomach, but I brushed it off. Then the skyline unfolded across the horizon, glass towers gleaming against the dusk, streetlights flickering on one by one like fireflies. My breath caught. "Wow," I whispered, pressing my forehead to the glass. "It's even better than I imagined." The driver said nothing. At the next intersection, he tapped his fingers on the steering wheel, then without warning cut sharply left, nearly clipping another car. Was that the right way?" I asked, startled. No answer. The cab picked up speed, weaving through unfamiliar side streets. "Excuse me?" My voice tightened. "My hostel's in Queens, right?" "You're going the wrong way." Still nothing, panic stirred. My fingers shook as I reached for my phone, but before I could unlock it, the car lurched into a narrow, dark alley and screeched to a stop. "Hey, what are you doing?" I demanded, my voice cracking. He turned around, his expression still blank, and raised a small spray bottle. A cold mist hit my face. A sharp chemical sting burned my eyes and throat. I gasped, coughing violently, trying to reach for the door handle, but my arms went weak, my vision bending and tilting. The last thing I saw was his vacant face hovering above me before everything went black. When I woke, the air was thick with damp and the sour stench of mold. My head pounded, and for a moment I couldn't understand why I couldn't move. Until I heard the faint clink of metal. My wrists and ankles were chained to the corners of a filthy bed. "No," I whispered, the word breaking apart. Then louder, trembling. "No, no, no." My voice dissolved into sobs that echoed off unseen walls. The room looked like a basement apartment, or what was left of one. The walls were cracked and flaking, streaked with something that looked like water damage, and a single flickering bulb swung above a boarded-up window. The air reeked of mildew and old rust. I screamed until my throat shredded, until every muscle in my chest burned. But the walls swallowed my voice whole. Footsteps echoed outside. A metallic clink, then the rattle of a lock. "Please," I gasped, my voice trembling. "Please help me." The door creaked open. I held my breath, bracing for the driver's face. But it wasn't him. A little girl stood there, no older than 9 or 10, clutching a tray of food. Her hair was matted into filthy dreadlocks, her face streaked with grime. She moved mechanically, like she'd done this before. Setting the tray on the nightstand, she glanced at me with wide, unblinking blue eyes too empty for her age. "Sweetheart," I stammered, tears spilling down my cheeks. "Please call the police. I'm not supposed to be here." "That man, he kidnapped me." She tilted her head, her expression flat. "I can't." "Why not?" I begged. Her lips twitched into something like a smile. "Because Mommy and Daddy want to have fun with you." The words sliced through me. My blood ran cold. "What?" I whispered. "What did you just say?" She blinked once, then turned and walked out, shutting the door behind her like nothing was wrong. I broke apart. My sobs came hard and fast, shaking my body until I couldn't breathe. God, no, no, no. Minutes passed, or maybe hours, before the door burst open again. A woman stumbled in. Her clothes hung off her in filthy, mismatched layers. Her hair wild, her skin smudged with soot. Her eyes glittered with something feral. She held a chunk of bread in one hand and shoved it into my mouth before I could speak. "Come on, little birdie," she crooned, her voice sing-song and rotten sweet. "Don't give up so soon. We're just getting started." The driver appeared behind her. The woman laughed, leaning against his chest as his arms slid around her waist. Together they looked at me like I was a painting, something beautiful and breakable. "My dad will find you," I choked, spitting blood. "The cameras, someone saw your car. They'll have your number plate." "You can't get away with this." They exchanged a knowing look. The woman bent close, her sour breath hot against my face. "You think we're that stupid?" She whispered. "Cameron always changes the plates before we hunt. You're not the first girl." Before I could react, her fist cracked across my face. A flash of white light exploded behind my eyelids. My head hit the mattress. I tasted iron. Their laughter echoed as they left. The lock sliding shut again. I curled into myself, shaking, the weight of hopelessness pressing down like a tide. Through the thin wall, I heard her voice, soft and lilting. "We'll be back soon, baby girl. Keep an eye on her." "Yes, Mommy," came the child's reply, sweet, obedient, just like I used to talk to Lucy, my little sister. I froze. "Lucy?" I whispered to no one. My chest heaved. Dear God. How many others? Later, the door creaked again. The girl slipped inside, quiet as a shadow. She studied me for a long time before reaching out to touch the locket around my neck. Her fingers were small, cracked, streaked with dirt. I love this, she murmured. What is it? My mom gave it to me, I said softly, seizing the only sliver of hope I had. When I was your age. Do you want it? Her eyes widened. She nodded. Okay, I said, voice shaking, but I can't take it off with my hands tied. You'll have to untie me. She hesitated, glancing toward the door. Mommy said, do you want it or not? I pressed gently, her lip trembled. After a moment, she stepped closer and unfastened the chains from my wrists. The second the metal loosened, I moved. Instinct took over. I grabbed her small arms, looping the chains around them, fastening her to the bed in one desperate motion. She didn't scream, didn't fight, just stared at me with those eerie glass blue eyes. I freed my ankles, heart pounding so hard I thought I'd faint. At the doorway, I turned back. She was smiling. You're the first one to get out, she whispered. I bolted. The hallway stank of decay and something sweetly rotten. My bare feet slapped against the concrete as I ran toward a faint draft, an exit. My breath came in ragged gasps. At the end of the corridor, I found a stairwell and climbed, each step slick with grime. At the top, I shoved open a heavy door, and cold air hit my face like salvation. I stumbled into the night. The street was empty, the sky the color of bruises. The building behind me was a decrepit row house, its windows blacked out, forgotten in some dead corner of Queens. I ran until I collapsed in front of a corner store, screaming for help. When the police arrived, I was bloodied, shaking, barely able to speak. They wrapped a blanket around me and followed me back to the house. But the family was gone. What they found inside made even the officers pale. 5 bodies, young women hidden in the attic, tourists just like me, girls who had come to New York chasing dreams and found something else waiting in the dark. The story dominated the news for weeks, but Cameron and Elise, those were their names, were never caught. Nor was the little girl. Sometimes I still wake up at night hearing her voice through the dark. You're the first one to get out. And I can't help but wonder, did she let me? And if she did, why? Maybe she wanted me to tell this story. Maybe she wanted to be remembered. Or maybe she's still out there waiting for the next yellow cab to pull away from LaGuardia. I never thought I'd be the kind of guy to believe in monsters. My name's Adam Reyes, and back in 2014 I was 22, broke and stuck in my hometown of Rockwell, New York, a place you didn't move to, just escaped from. I'd graduated a few months earlier from a community college in Syracuse with an associate degree in business management, and absolutely no prospects. Rent in the city was impossible, and my parents still had a spare room, so I swallowed my pride, packed my beat-up duffel, and came home. I told myself it was temporary, a few months tops. I'd pick up a part-time job, save what I could, then leave again. But months passed and somehow I was still there. Rockwell wasn't much to look at. The downtown strip had maybe 3 businesses that hadn't given up yet. A diner that shut its doors at 8 sharp, a gas station that sold more cigarettes than fuel, and a hardware store run by an old man who'd been about to retire since the Bush administration. The rest of the storefronts were boarded over, faded signs still clinging to the windows. The only place that ever felt remotely alive was the county fairgrounds. Every summer, rides and vendors rolled in like a traveling dream, filling the air with grease, sugar, and laughter. For 1 week, the whole town buzzed. Then the fair would vanish overnight, leaving only muddy tracks, an empty baseball diamond, and a grandstand that smelled faintly of mildew and old beer. When you're 22, broke and half ashamed of your life, your options for entertainment are pretty limited. Mine became walking at night. It helped me think or not think. That September night was humid, the kind that sticks to your skin. I couldn't sleep, so I threw on a hoodie, jammed my headphones in, and set off through the quiet streets. As I passed the gas station, Marcus was there, leaning against his dented Honda Civic, a cigarette glowing between his fingers. "Reyes!" he called out, his voice cutting through the stillness. I lifted a hand in a lazy wave but didn't slow down. The smell of gasoline and smoke lingered in the air. A few blocks later, I cut toward the edge of town. where the streetlights thinned and the fairgrounds loomed like a dead carnival. My flashlight beam danced across the empty bleachers and the sagging concession stands. Then I saw it, or thought I did. A shape between the trees. I froze, my chest tightened. It stepped into view and every instinct in my body screamed wrong. A skull, elongated with hollow sockets that swallowed the light. Antlers branched from it like blackened bone, stretching wider than seemed possible. Its body was shadow, its presence heavy enough to bend the air around it. Then it opened its mouth. No scream, just whispers. Dozens of them layered and overlapping like a crowd murmuring just out of reach. My ears rang, my pulse hammered. I staggered backward trying to make sense of it, but then one voice rose above the rest. Adam. It knew my name. I ran. I didn't look back. My flashlight swung wildly, cutting through the darkness as I tore across the field until the grass gave way to pavement. I burst onto the street, lungs burning, heart slamming against my ribs, the night behind me thick with the echo of my own name. After that night, I couldn't keep it to myself anymore. Something inside me needed to know, needed to hear someone else say they'd seen it too. So I started asking around, quiet at first, careful not to sound insane. At the diner, over the hum of the ceiling fan and the smell of burnt coffee, I overheard two old men talking in the booth behind me. You hear about that thing out by the fairgrounds? One said. The other grunted. My grandson swears he saw it last summer. Says it's been around since the 70s. Some kind of spirit. Spirit of what? The man shrugged, the ice in his glass clinking. Hell if I know. Maybe something older than the town itself. Their words crawled under my skin. Later that day at the hardware store, Mrs. Callahan, a frail woman with cloudy eyes and hands that never stopped trembling, leaned across the counter when I brought up the fairgrounds. My father used to warn us kids, she whispered, voice shaking. Don't go out there after dark. He said something walks those fields. Something that calls your name if you stay too long. The way she said it, so certain like she'd seen it herself, made my stomach twist. After that, I couldn't sleep. Every night brought new sounds. Scratching at my window, slow, deliberate, like fingernails on glass. My phone would buzz at 3 a.m. sharp, the screen flashing unknown caller. When I picked up, there was nothing but breathing. Deep, human, wet. Marcus told me I was losing it. Man, you need to get out of this town, he said one night, flicking ash from his cigarette. Before it gets worse. He was right. But leaving wasn't easy. I had no money, no job, no plan. And part of me, some stubborn, terrified part, needed to understand what I'd seen. It was late October when I finally went back. The air had turned sharp, carrying the smell of wet earth and dead leaves. I didn't bring a flashlight this time. I wanted to see it without the beam shaking in my hand. No tricks. No excuses. The fairgrounds were silent when I arrived. The world felt hollow. I stood at the edge of the baseball diamond, my breath fogging in the cold. For a long time there was nothing, just the whisper of the wind through the metal bleachers. Then slowly the dirt began to move. It rose from the ground like the earth itself was exhaling it, antlers scraping against the night sky, its skull glinting faintly in the moonlight. The hollow sockets locked onto me and it stepped forward. This time I saw it move, its limbs jerking stiffly like something unused to having bones. Adam. My blood went cold. I ran. The sound of my footsteps pounded in rhythm with my heartbeat, but its voice followed, never shouting, never whispering, just calling. Always calling. By the time I reached home, I was sobbing, shaking so badly I could barely get the door open. 2 days later, I packed a single duffel bag, got in my car, and drove until the sun came up. I didn't look back. I never went back. But here's the thing. It didn't stay in Rockwell. Sometimes, when I'm walking alone at night in some new town, miles away, I feel it. The prickle at the base of my neck. The faint whisper of my name carried on the wind. I don't think it was bound to that place. I think it was bound to me. And one night, when I'm too tired to run, it'll step out of the shadows again. I grew up in Queens, New York, a place where every neighbor knew your name, your parents, and probably what you ate for dinner. But that never stopped me from feeling like I didn't belong. My name's Kareem Malik, and being Muslim in post-9/11 America wasn't something you could ever really prepare for. By middle school around 2012, I had already grown a thick enough shell to survive the slurs. Terrorist, camel jockey, and worse, but two kids, Derek Russo and Anthony Tony Marino, made sure to dig past that armor every single day. They weren't just bullies, they were predators who fed on humiliation. They shoved me into lockers so hard the metal rattled. They tripped me between classes, knocked food trays out of my hands in the cafeteria, and laughed when I fell. Once, when our teacher stepped out of the room, Derek slammed me to the floor while Tony spat on me and hissed, "Your people killed ours." His spit hit my cheek and burned more than the sting of the slap that followed. The worst came one afternoon when they dragged me into the bathroom, locked the door, and dunked my head in the toilet. I remember the taste of that water, rust, filth, bleach, and their laughter echoing off the tiles. I had friends, the kind who posted about equality online, who said all the right things about justice, but when it came to stepping in, they stayed silent. That silence hurt more than anything those two ever did. By 2015, I was 15. My parents, immigrants from Pakistan who ran a small grocery store, thought I was strong, that I could handle the teasing. I never told them the truth. I couldn't bear to see that kind of pain in their eyes. That December, they decided we all needed a break, a weekend at our small vacation house near Shawang Ridge upstate. It was meant to be quiet, peaceful. The house was modest, creaking wooden floors, a brick fireplace, and surrounded by a wall of pine trees that made the air smell clean and sharp. I brought my best friend Jaden Carter, the only person who had ever really seen me. Jaden never made jokes about my name or asked if my mom wore a hijab. He was just there, steady, like an anchor. We left Queens around 6 in the evening, traffic thick and angry, but by 8:30 the chaos faded into the calm hum of country roads. When we arrived, the first thing I noticed was the silence. No car horns, no sirens, just the whisper of wind through trees. Inside, the house smelled faintly of pine and dust. My parents unpacked while Jaden and I dropped our bags in the guest room, the bed squeaking under us when we sat down. That night, lying there in the dim yellow light, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. Ease. The next morning, Jaden grinned as he pulled on his boots. "Your parents said we've got 4 hours, right?" "Yeah," I said, stuffing granola bars into my pack. "Plenty. There's a trail by the waterfall we can hit." We set out around 10. The winter air bit at our cheeks and our breath came out in pale clouds. The forest felt ancient, quiet except for the crunch of frost-crusted leaves and the occasional caw of a crow. We found 3 geocaches in the first hour: a rusted tin box with a plastic dinosaur inside, a tiny notebook crammed in a film canister, and a cracked Tupperware filled with cheap trinkets. It was stupid fun, but for a while we were kids again, laughing and racing through the woods. By the time we reached the waterfall, our laughter echoed against the rocks, swallowed by the sound of rushing water. For a brief moment, everything was simple. Then I heard it, footsteps, slow, heavy, following. I turned, expecting hikers, but the sight froze the breath in my lungs. Standing on the trail were Derek Russo and Tony Marino, the same faces I'd prayed never to see again. "What the hell?" The words barely left my mouth. "How did you even find us?" Derek grinned, head tilted like a wolf sizing up prey. "You thought you could run away from us? That's cute." Tony smirked, pulling something from his jacket. My stomach dropped. It was a hunting knife, long and gleaming. "This time," Tony said, his voice low and trembling with excitement, "nobody's around to save your sorry ass." Jaden stepped forward, his voice cracking between fear and anger. "Yo, what the hell are you doing? You followed us here?"
Are you insane?
"Shut the fuck up," Tony snapped, eyes glassy, unhinged. "You don't know shit." Before I could move, Derek lunged. He was bigger, always had been. His shoulder hit me like a sledgehammer. My back slammed into the frozen ground, the air tearing out of my lungs. For a second, all I could hear was the pounding of my heartbeat and the crunch of his boots closing in. His hand slammed against the back of my neck, fingers digging hard enough to bruise, forcing me toward the edge of the waterfall. The roar of rushing water drowned everything else, a thunder that swallowed my cries. Below, jagged rocks waited like open jaws. "You know what your people did, right?" Derek hissed, breath hot against my ear. His face was inches from mine, eyes bright with fury. "My uncle died in the towers. And you think you get to live free, laugh, go hiking like nothing happened? Now, you don't get that." I gasped, choking on the mist that sprayed my face. I had nothing to do with that. My family's American. I was born here. His grip only tightened. The world spun. Panic clawed at my chest until every breath felt like broken glass. A few feet away, Tony had Jaden pinned against a tree. The knife in his hand glinted like a sliver of moonlight. Jaden thrashed, shouting hoarsely, "Help! Somebody help us." I thought I was going to die. I could feel the icy spray of the waterfall on my cheeks as Derek shoved me closer. My boots scraped against slick moss, searching for leverage. My legs kicked uselessly over the drop. Then, a gunshot cracked through the forest. Everything froze. Derek's grip faltered. Tony stiffened, knife still poised midair. We all turned toward the sound. A man stood about 20 feet away, dressed in camouflage, a hunter's vest over flannel, rifle raised but aimed toward the sky. His voice was calm but carried the weight of command. "Let them go, now." For a split second, I thought Derek might shove me over just to prove a point. His jaw clenched, eyes flicking from me to the hunter. Then with a sharp exhale, he released me and stepped back. Tony muttered a string of curses before lowering the knife and shoving Jaden away. The hunter's gaze burned through them. Get the hell out of here before I decide to use this properly. Derek and Tony didn't wait. They bolted into the trees, branches snapping as they vanished into the dark. The hunter lowered his rifle and approached slowly. "You boys all right?" My knees gave out. I nodded weakly, but Jaden answered for both of us. They tried to kill us. Who were they?" The man asked, frowning. "Bullies," I croaked, my voice barely audible. "From our school in Queens. They followed us here. I don't even know how." The man shook his head, the lines on his face tightening. "That's not normal. Kids who'd go that far? Those aren't bullies. Those are dangerous people." They meant every bit of it. He offered to walk us back. We didn't argue. Every crunch of leaves, every distant snap of a branch made my stomach knot tighter. I kept imagining Derek's face appearing again from between the trees. When we finally reached the house, my parents came running out, pale and panicked at the sight of a stranger with a rifle. We told them everything, stumbling through words, shaking. At first, they didn't believe us. Who would? But when the hunter spoke, calm and certain, the color drained from their faces. That afternoon, we went straight to the local police station. The hunter came too. Even though he admitted he might catch trouble for firing his gun in a restricted zone, he gave his statement. We gave ours. The officers listened closely. One of them, an older man with gray hair and a heavy voice, leaned back in his chair. "If what you're saying checks out," he said, "those kids weren't just bullies. That was attempted assault with a deadly weapon, maybe even attempted murder." The words made my stomach twist. They promised to contact our school immediately. The hunter got off with a warning, a nod of gratitude from my father. We spent the rest of that weekend quietly, not speaking much. But my mind replayed everything. The choking spray of the waterfall, Derek's grip on my neck, the wild gleam in his eyes. On Monday morning, before first period, I was called to the principal's office. My parents were already there, their faces drawn tight. 2 police officers stood near the door. The principal cleared his throat. "Kareem, Derek Russo and Anthony Marino have been expelled, effective immediately. There will also be legal consequences. Given their age, it'll likely go through juvenile court." Relief washed over me, but it didn't feel clean. It didn't erase the terror. After that, high school was quieter. I still heard the occasional slur whispered in hallways, but no one ever laid a hand on me again. Years later, in 2019, I was walking through Times Square, lost in the blur of noise and neon, when I saw Derek. He was older, unshaven, walking in the opposite direction. He didn't even glance at me. For a moment, I thought about stopping him, demanding answers. "How did you find us that day? Why did you hate me so much?" But I didn't, I just kept walking. Even now, nearly a decade later, I still dream of that day at the waterfall. The deafening roar, the cold metal of fear pressing into my neck, the knife glinting in the mist. It reminds me that no matter how far you run, hate has a way of finding you, and that day it almost killed me. It began almost a year ago, the day we moved into that apartment. I remember every detail like it's burned into my brain. My name's Samantha Reed, and my husband Daniel and I had just uprooted our quiet suburban life in Ohio for New York City. Daniel had landed a big job offer with a financial firm in Manhattan, something that felt too good to turn down. So just like that, we were living on the 26th floor of a sleek glass tower in Hell's Kitchen, our first real taste of the city we'd only seen in movies. The apartment looked like something out of a design magazine. Polished wood floors, marble countertops, stainless steel everything, but it was the floor-to-ceiling windows that caught me most. At night, they framed the chaos below. Yellow cabs, honking horns, the constant hum of people who never seemed to sleep. It was hypnotic at first, that view. I'd stand there every night, coffee mug in hand, and think, we actually did it. We're here. Daniel was a natural city person, confident, easygoing, the kind of guy who could talk to anyone. Within weeks, he'd made friends at work, charmed the neighbors, and somehow turned our weekends into a rotating schedule of social gatherings. By month 6, we had a tight little circle. Becca and Jim, who lived a few blocks away. Jason and Clara, old friends from Daniel's college days. We'd do dinner parties, trivia nights, rooftop drinks. Everyone meshed perfectly. Then there was Mark Bennett. He worked with Daniel, mid-30s, cheerful, maybe a little too cheerful. Something about him always felt slightly off, though I could never say why. Mark never came alone. Every time he showed up, he had some random friend in tow. Someone quiet, awkward, barely saying a word all evening. It became a running joke among us. Mark's emotional support +1, Daniel would tease, and we'd all laugh. He'd grin, raise his glass, and shrug like he didn't mind. None of us ever thought much of it. That Friday night started like so many others. Drinks and board games at Becca and Jim's place, laughter spilling into the small hours. By the time Daniel and I got back home around 11, I was drained in that content post-social way. Daniel kicked off his shoes and collapsed on the couch, scrolling through his phone. "Hey, babe," he said without looking up. "How about a movie tomorrow? Something easy. Maybe that comedy you wanted to see?" "Yeah," I mumbled, brushing my teeth, half asleep already. "Sounds perfect." By 11:30, we were in bed. I remember the sound of his breathing, slow even, reassuring. And then at 3:45 a.m., something pulled me out of sleep. I don't know what. My eyes opened to blackness. For a moment, I thought it was just the usual city noise, the radiator maybe, or wind against the windows. But then I heard it, breathing. Not Daniel's. This was different, uneven, shallow, almost uncertain. My heart seized in my chest. I turned my head toward the corner of the room, where the light from outside barely reached. Something was there, or maybe not. A darker shape within the dark. My breath caught. Every inch of my skin went cold. I didn't move. Couldn't. The sound went on for what felt like forever, then faded as if someone had stepped back into silence. I stared at the corner until my eyes burned. Finally, I told myself it had to be nothing. A dream, a trick of the mind. I rolled over, forcing myself to believe it, refusing to wake Daniel over a sound that might not even exist. The next night, I swore I wouldn't let it get to me. I told myself it was the building settling, the vents, something explainable. But around 4 a.m., I woke again, same time, same heavy silence. And there it was, that breathing. Closer this time, louder, like someone was standing right beside the bed. I held my breath, listening. My pulse pounded so hard I thought it might wake Daniel. My eyes darted across the room, nothing moved. Just the shadows and the faint city glow leaking through the glass. "It's nothing," I whispered to myself, barely making a sound. "Just pipes. Just air." But deep down I knew I was lying. He had a big presentation the next day. I didn't want him losing sleep over something that might turn out to be nothing. So again, I said nothing. By morning, I felt like I hadn't slept at all. My head throbbed. My shoulders ached from being clenched all night. Even the sunlight creeping through the blinds felt harsh, intrusive. Every shadow in the apartment seemed to move wrong, stretch too far. I couldn't bring myself to go into the bedroom, it felt tainted somehow. So I stayed curled up on the couch in the living room, half asleep, half waiting for another noise that never came. Around 2 in the afternoon, I finally forced myself to shower, hoping the water would wash away the dread. But when I turned off the faucet and reached for my towel, I froze. Footsteps, soft but distinct, right outside the bathroom door. My breath hitched. Water dripped from my hair onto the tile, loud in the silence. I stood perfectly still, listening. 10 seconds passed, then 20. Nothing, just the faint hum of the building. Slowly, I cracked the door open. The hallway beyond was empty. The light still on, the air still. I swallowed hard and whispered to no one. "You're losing it, Sam." I forced a weak laugh, convincing myself it must have come from another floor. When Daniel came home at 5:15, everything looked normal again. He smiled, leaned down, kissed my forehead. "How was your day?" "Uneventful," I lied. Over dinner, though, I couldn't keep it in anymore. I told him everything, the breathing, the footsteps, the way the apartment suddenly felt. Wrong. He chuckled at first, probably trying to calm me down. "Babe, you're overthinking it," he said, swirling his wine. "Old buildings make weird noises. Could be the pipes, could be the floors settling." But when he looked at me again, really looked, his smile faded. "Hey," he said softly, reaching across the table. "If it happens again, you wake me immediately, promise?" I nodded. Just hearing that steadied me a little. For the first time in days, I felt like maybe I wasn't alone in this. By 11, exhaustion swallowed me whole. I fell asleep the moment my head hit the pillow. Then at 3:30 a.m., I jolted awake. That sound again. Breathing. Slow, heavy, deliberate. Only this time it wasn't coming from the corner. It was right outside our bedroom door. "Daniel," I whispered, my voice shaking as I nudged his arm. "Daniel, I can hear it again." He stirred, groggy. "What?" he muttered, then blinked hard. "The breathing?" "Yeah." He listened for a moment, then his expression changed. "Holy shit," he said under his breath. "I can hear it too." He swung his legs out of bed and flicked on the light. The room flooded with brightness. Nothing. No one. Just us, then a sound. From the closet. A rustle. Daniel stiffened. "Mark?" He called out, voice uncertain, almost disbelieving. A pause. Then another sound, this one lower. A faint creak from under the bed. Before I could even process it, something began to move. I screamed as Mark Bennett emerged slowly from beneath the bed. His eyes were glassy, distant, like he wasn't fully there. His voice came out hoarse, almost a whisper. I didn't want to be the third wheel anymore. Then he lunged. Daniel reacted instantly, grabbing him by the shoulders. The two of them crashed into the closet, slamming into shelves, sending clothes and boxes raining down. Mark fought like someone possessed, wild and wordless. I stumbled back, heart pounding, every instinct screaming run. I bolted for the door, but Mark caught my wrist before I could take 2 steps. "Sam," he said, almost gently, almost like an apology. I screamed, loud, raw, desperate. Daniel broke free and tackled him to the floor. They hit hard, both grunting, thrashing. I fumbled for my phone, my fingers slick with sweat, shaking so violently I almost dropped it. Somehow I managed to dial. "What's your emergency?" The operator's voice was calm, professional, distant. "There's a man in my apartment," I sobbed. "He's attacking my husband. Please hurry." The minutes that followed felt like hours. When the police finally burst in, I was pressed against the wall, still holding the phone to my ear. They pulled Mark off Daniel, restraining him. His eyes were vacant, his breathing steady, unnatural. "I didn't want to be the third wheel anymore," he murmured again and again, as if the words were stuck on repeat. One officer just stared at him. "What the hell is wrong with you, man?" Mark only smiled faintly, a strange, empty curve of the lips. Daniel had a bruise forming along his temple, a few cuts on his arms, but he was alive. That was all that mattered. The investigators told us later that Mark had been inside our apartment for days before that night. He'd somehow stolen a spare key, slipping in when we were at work, sometimes staying overnight. They found his fingerprints in the kitchen, the bathroom, even the bedroom closet. Why? No one could say. His mind was too far gone to explain it. The police assured us he hadn't planned to kill us. But when I looked into his eyes that night, what was left of him, I knew that wasn't true. We never went back to that apartment. We packed what we could and left the city behind. Now back in our small Ohio hometown, far from the glass towers and sleepless streets, I still wake up sometimes at 3:30 a.m. My heart racing. My skin slick with sweat, and in the darkness I swear I can hear it again. That slow, deliberate breathing, and I can't stop wondering how many nights he'd already been there, lying inches away in the dark, watching me, waiting. I was 11 when my family left our quiet life in Oregon and moved to New York City. My father, Daniel Hayes, had just been offered a job with one of Manhattan's top financial firms. The salary was enough to change everything, enough that we packed up our little 2-bedroom house on the edge of Portland and stepped into a world that felt almost unreal. My mom, Ayeko, and my grandmother, Hana, had always been creatures of smaller places. They were born in a village outside Kyoto, Japan, and even after years in America, New York's noise and size unsettled them in ways I couldn't grasp then. They whispered about crime, strangers, too many eyes on you all the time. I didn't share their fear. At 11, the chaos of the city felt like possibility. The traffic, the flashing signs, the rush of people, it all felt alive in a way Oregon never had. We moved into a narrow brownstone apartment in Midtown, close enough for Dad to walk to his office near 47th and 6th. He worked late most nights, the front door creaking open long after I'd gone to bed. The day it happened, the man opened the car door for me with an exaggerated politeness that made me feel both special and small. I slid into the cool leather seat, my heart beating fast with the thrill of independence. He climbed in after me, his movements casual, practiced. "So what's your name, champ?" he asked, patting my cheek with a too familiar hand. "Kai," I muttered, shrinking away from his touch. "Nice, you can call me Richard," he said with a smile that never quite reached his eyes. At first, I didn't think much of it. The car hummed forward, city lights blurring past. But when we turned left, away from the bright arcade I'd glimpsed a few minutes earlier, something twisted inside me. I thought it was just over there," I said, frowning toward the window. Richard chuckled softly, leaning closer. "Well," he said, his voice low and almost amused, "I may have stretched the truth a little." "What do you mean?" I asked, my voice tight. "Relax," he murmured, his breath warm and heavy with cologne that burned my nose. "You're safe with me." Something inside me snapped awake, an animal instinct, raw and cold. My chest tightened. I shifted toward the door, trying the handle, but his hand clamped over mine, firm, cold, possessive. "You're okay," he whispered, his gaze crawling over me in a way that made bile rise in my throat. The car slowed, pulling into a narrow, filthy alley. The walls were smeared with graffiti, the dumpsters overflowing. A homeless woman dug through the trash, oblivious, humming softly to herself. Panic surged through me. Richard's arm suddenly wrapped around my waist, his other hand sealing over my mouth. My muffled screams filled the car, wild and desperate. I kicked, clawed, tears burning my eyes. "Stop fighting," he hissed against my ear. "It's okay." But then a voice. The driver's voice, sharp, cold. "Sir, that's not the one." And Richard froze. "What?" the boss said, a red-haired teenager. "Spanish kid. This one's not him." My stomach dropped so fast I felt sick. I wasn't even the one they were after. "Damn it," Richard snarled, his grip on me tightening like a vice. "I can't just let him go now." "Sir, you'll be exposed," the driver snapped, his tone nervous. "Shut up," Richard hissed. The second his hand slipped from my face, instinct exploded through me. I bit down hard on his palm, hard enough to taste blood, and kicked the door open with all the strength I had. The cold air hit me as I tumbled into the alley. "Catch him!" Richard screamed. "Don't let him get away." I ran. I ran like something feral, lungs burning, throat raw. The sound of their footsteps and the rev of the car's engine chased me, echoing off the graffiti-stained walls. Trash crunched beneath my shoes and the stench of rot filled my nose. Somehow I burst out onto a crowded avenue, blinding sunlight and honking horns swallowing me whole. I nearly collided with a woman holding shopping bags. She screamed as I stumbled, gasping, and collapsed onto the sidewalk. A police officer on a motorbike screeched to a halt nearby. He jumped off and crouched beside me, his eyes scanning my tear-streaked face. "Hey kid, what's wrong? Where's your parents?" I could barely breathe. My throat worked around the words. "Dad, office, Midtown." Within minutes, I was back outside my father's building. The entire street flashed blue and red. Squad cars everywhere, officers shouting into radios, the crowd buzzing with confusion. Then I saw them. My mom and dad rushing toward me, faces pale, both crying. Mom dropped to her knees and pulled me into her arms, trembling. rocking me like she used to when I was small. Dad stood behind her, jaw clenched, his expression a storm of fury and terror. But over her shoulder, I saw him, Richard. He was across the street, slipping out of a glass building, walking fast toward the same black car. My blood ran cold. I tore free of my mother's grip and screamed, voice cracking, "That's him!" "That's him, Richard?" Every cop on the block turned. Richard froze mid-step, his eyes meeting mine. For a split second, neither of us moved. Then he bolted. A sharp crack split the air. An officer's taser fired, a flash of wires, a sound like lightning, and Richard dropped to the ground, twitching and writhing on the pavement. "Mr. Langford," my dad shouted suddenly, his voice breaking. He took a step forward, shock and disbelief etched across his face. I stared at him, the world spinning. You know him?" Dad's fist curled tight. His voice shook. He's my boss." For a moment, everything blurred. The lights, the sirens, my mother's sobs. Then my father lunged. Rage erupted from him like something primal. He punched Richard square in the face before the cops could react. They pulled him back, shouting. Richard, Mr. Langford, and was cuffed, bleeding, his head hanging as they shoved him into the back of a squad car. In the days that followed, our world fell apart. News headlines screamed his name. A respected executive arrested on multiple counts of child predation and trafficking. Other boys came forward, 3 of them, their faces pale and hollow, their voices trembling as they told their stories. My mother refused to stay in New York after that. Within a month, we were back in Oregon. My father resigned quietly, his eyes hollow in a way I'd never seen before. Life went on, at least on the surface. But shadows never really left me. Now I'm 26. Ironically, I work in New York again, just a few blocks from where it all happened. Some days during lunch, I stand by the vending machine in my office, watching strangers rush by, their faces buried in phones. And whenever I see a child alone, small, wide-eyed, uncertain, I stop. I ask if they're okay, because I remember too well what it was like to be that boy. Naive, trusting, almost taken. And I know deep down how many Richards are still out there. I never liked taking the bus in New York. Not because I thought it was unsafe, though it often was, or because it crawled slower than the subway. It was something else, something about how it felt stuck between worlds. The bus was limbo, a strange purgatory where the city's pulse dulled but never stopped beating. That night, though, I didn't have the energy to care. I was too damn tired. My name's Daniel Ruiz. I was 28 back then, working as a junior accountant in a small midtown firm. The job wasn't hard, just suffocating in that quiet way that kills you over time. My boss, Mr. Warren, had a special gift for making people feel disposable. He'd stand behind you, half smiling like he was already rehearsing your replacement in his head. You could be breathing wrong and he'd still make it feel like insubordination. Every day I told myself it was temporary, that I was saving up to quit to finally focus on my writing. But in New York, temporary has a nasty habit of turning into forever. That evening, January 2013, the sky hung low and heavy, a dull slab of gray pressing down on the city. I remember standing outside the office, my breath fogging in the cold, debating between the subway and the M42 crosstown bus. The subway meant crowds, noise, the reek of piss and scorched metal. The bus meant I could maybe close my eyes for 15 minutes. That was all the reasoning I needed. I swiped my Metro card and climbed aboard. The bus was nearly empty. The first thing that hit me was the smell. Stale, damp, with a faint sourness underneath like wet laundry left too long in a basement. Fingerprints smeared the fogged windows. The seats looked darker than usual, cushions soaked in some old oily spill. "Evening," I muttered to the driver. He didn't answer. Just sat there, an older man, late 60s maybe, face sagging under the bill of a flat cap. His hands gripped the steering wheel so tight his knuckles were white. I figured he was just another New Yorker running on fumes. Who wasn't? I slid into a seat 3 rows back, tossed my bag beside me and let my head rest against the cold window. The bus shuddered forward, and the city lights smeared into red and yellow streaks against the glass. My eyelids grew heavy. Within minutes, I drifted into a restless, shallow sleep. The smell woke me first, sharp, acidic, burning flesh. It clawed at my throat, made me gag and cough until my chest hurt. I sat up, gasping, the bus still rattling down the road, but something was wrong. The familiar city hum was gone. No horns, no sirens, no voices. Not even the muffled thump of music from passing cars. Just silence. I blinked and peered out the window. Nothing. Absolute blackness. No streetlights, no skyline, no reflection of my own face. Just an endless void pressing against the glass. My pulse quickened. What the hell? I whispered. I rubbed my eyes, thinking maybe I was dreaming, but when I looked again, the dark was still there, deep and endless. I leaned forward to see the driver. He was still at the wheel, shoulders rigid, staring dead ahead into that nothingness. "Hey," I said, my voice hoarse. "Where are we?" He didn't respond. "Sir, you missed my stop." "What's going on?" Still nothing. Then I realized his lips were moving. Barely. He was whispering, but the sounds didn't form words I recognized. They were low and guttural, like something chewed and swallowed before being spoken. "Hello?" I stepped into the aisle, grabbing the metal bar for balance. "Are you okay?" Before I could reach him, he suddenly slammed open the driver's door and stumbled out into the dark. My brain stuttered. I heard the crunch beneath his shoes, gravel. There was no gravel on this route. No place in Manhattan like that. "Hey!" I shouted. The old man broke into a sprint, arms jerking wildly as he bolted into the blackness. My heart hammered. "Stop, what the hell are you doing?" He stopped abruptly and turned toward me. That's when I saw his eyes, glowing red like hot coals flickering in the dark. His skin hung in strips, peeling away from his face. Something moved beneath it, writhing, worms crawling through the gaps between his teeth and gums. His grin widened, rotted but sharp. "Daniel," he rasped, his voice cracking like wood catching flame. "Madam's been waiting for you." "Madam?" My stomach dropped. I stumbled back a step, every nerve screaming to run. "What? Who the hell are you?" I shouted. The old man's laugh came out wet and gurgling like water bubbling through a clogged drain. His skin began to melt, literally melt, peeling away in thick, glistening sheets that slid down his face and neck like candle wax. One of his eyes dropped from its socket, dangling for a moment before splattering onto the ground. Still, he raised a trembling hand and pointed directly at me, his flesh sloughing off to reveal a skeletal finger beneath. "You're next on the list." "Daniel," he rasped, the words grinding through ruined vocal cords. No going back. I couldn't move. My legs felt fused to the earth. I could only watch as he turned and bolted into the dark, his ragged screams echoing through the emptiness. Mid-stride, his body ignited, flames wrapping him in violent orange light. His shriek cut through the void, piercing, inhuman, until both sound and fire vanished into black. The bus lights began to flicker, stuttering on and off in rapid bursts that seared my eyes. The clicking filled my head like nails tapping inside my skull. I stumbled down the steps and out the open door. My sneakers crunched on gravel. Gravel again. But there was no road, no city, nothing around me, just an infinite suffocating blackness stretching in every direction. "Help!" I screamed, my voice tearing in my throat. "Somebody, please!" Only silence answered. Thick, heavy, endless. Then faintly I heard it. Voices, distant at first, then swelling, merging into a horrifying chorus. Men, women, children, all crying out the same thing. My name. Daniel. Over and over, louder, closer. I clamped my palms over my ears, but the voices drilled through my skull, vibrating through bone. My knees hit the ground. I screamed back at them, but my own voice drowned in theirs. Finally I broke. I couldn't stand it anymore. I followed the sound. I walked for what felt like miles. The ground crunched beneath me, though I couldn't see it. The air thickened with a stench of rot and smoke. Then out of nowhere it appeared, a house. A massive, rotting Victorian mansion standing alone in the void. Its windows were nothing but gaping holes, its siding blackened with decay. The stench of death radiated from it, so strong it burned my nose. "Come inside," a woman's voice called softly. Sweet, almost kind. I don't know why I listened. Maybe I couldn't do anything else. My feet moved on their own, carrying me through the doorless frame. The instant I stepped inside, the world changed. The decay vanished. A chandelier blazed to life overhead, dripping with crystal light. Velvet red rugs sprawled across the floor, the air heavy with perfume and smoke. The hallways bent strangely inward, closing in on me, claustrophobic. From the shadows she appeared. A woman. Frail, hunched, her skin like paper etched with deep rivers of wrinkles. Her eyes locked on mine, glittering with something ancient. A slow, deliberate smile crept across her face. "Daniel," she whispered. "At last." I swallowed, throat dry. "Who are you?" She clapped her hands once. The sound was brittle, sharp. "Welcome home." "This isn't my home," I snapped, stepping back. Her nails, long brown, curved like talons, dragged against the fabric of her tattered dress, scratching faintly. "Oh, but it is," she crooned. "This is where you belong. The one before you failed?" And so he burned. My stomach twisted. "What place? What are you talking about?" She leaned closer. Her breath hit my face, thick with the stench of decay. "Bring me 3 young hearts, fresh, still beating," she whispered, "or you will burn too." "What the hell are you talking about?" I yelled. Her hands shot out, claws slicing across my arm. Pain exploded through me, white hot. My vision fractured. Images flooded my mind. Impossible, brutal visions, a bleeding red moon hanging low. Giants feasting on screaming bodies, beasts with faces split in two, their wails echoing inside my skull. "This is where you'll go if you fail," she hissed. "Now go, boy. Time runs short." She shoved me hard. I hit the floor with a jolt, hard wood beneath me. When I looked up, I was back in my apartment. My tiny studio. The radiator hissed softly. Faint traffic murmured outside the window. "Jesus Christ," I breathed, pressing my hands over my face. My heart thundered. My clothes were soaked with sweat. "It was a dream," I whispered. "Just a nightmare." I stumbled to the kitchen, still shaking, made coffee with trembling hands, and then dragged myself into the shower. The hot water grounded me, helped me breathe again until I looked down. On my arm, right where she'd scratched me, a bruise bloomed dark and real. I froze. Then, through the hiss of the steam, a whisper curled around me, low and cold. "Time is running out, Daniel. 3 hearts, or the flames." I spun around. No one. Only the fogged mirror and my own reflection, wide-eyed, trembling. A man already marked. I never imagined one night from my college years would keep haunting me more than a decade later. Yet 13 years on, I still feel that same cold knot tighten in my stomach every time the memory surfaces. I was 19 back then, a sophomore at Bayshore College, a quiet liberal arts school tucked away in Suffolk County, Long Island. My freshman year had been brutal. I was shy, awkward, painfully aware of how much I didn't fit in. But then I found a lifeline, a group of people who somehow made me feel seen. 7 of us, bound by boredom and curiosity, became inseparable. Adrian, that's me. Cautious, rational to a fault. Always the one saying, maybe we shouldn't. Lucas was the opposite, tall, loud, fearless, or maybe just good at pretending. Jordan, the eternal skeptic, hid his curiosity about anything supernatural behind sarcasm. Miles, jittery and pale, masked his nerves with constant shaky laughter. Tyrell was calm and thoughtful, the steady center whenever the rest of us spun out. Nico, the prankster, thrived on chaos and always went one step too far. And Samantha, Sam, was the glue that held us together, grounded, brave, and smart enough to keep 6 idiots from getting expelled. We lived for horror. We'd binge scary movies, mimic lines from Dracula and Psycho, and stay up until sunrise whispering ghost stories that left us too afraid to move. But sophomore year, fear stopped being just entertainment. It was Sam who started it. One cool September evening, sprawled across the dorm couch, she twirled a strand of hair around her finger and said, "Guys, what if we actually did something scary? Like, go somewhere haunted?" Lucas grinned instantly, his eyes lighting up. "A ghost hunt?" "Hell yes," Jordan groaned. "You know I don't believe in that crap, right?" Miles laughed, but it cracked halfway through. "Doesn't matter. If Sam's in, I'm in." Nico leaned forward, smirking. "Perfect. Let's find somewhere that'll make us actually scream." Tyrell, quiet until then, looked up from his phone. "There's a place near Miller's Hollow," he said slowly. "My cousin swears he saw something out there once. A figure dancing in the trees. Locals won't go near it after dark." A hush settled. No one objected. We didn't need to say it, we were doing this. By the time Halloween rolled around, the air itself seemed to buzz with anticipation. Leaves spun across the asphalt like sparks, and the cold bit at our faces as we met in the dim campus parking lot. Lucas's old Jeep groaned as we piled in. Sam and I squeezed into the back, Lucas behind the wheel. Jordan drove his Honda, carrying Miles, Tyrell, and Nico. The first stretch of road was harmless. Streetlights, the low hum of passing cars, the comfort of civilization. But the moment we veered off the main road, it was like crossing a threshold. Darkness swallowed everything. The trees crowded closer, their bare branches knitting together above us. The moon was a thin white smear in the sky, casting just enough light to make the shadows worse. "Man, it's really dark here," Miles said, his voice unsteady. "I feel like we're driving into another world," Sam whispered, staring out the window. Miller's Hollow. Just the name felt heavy, ancient. The woods grew denser, the road thinner, until even Lucas eased up on the gas. He had that look, the reckless spark that always appeared right before something stupid. 30 minutes later, the road ended without warning. A massive fallen tree blocked our path. "Well, this is new," Lucas muttered, killing the engine. We climbed out, stretching our legs, flashlights cutting pale cones through the fog. The forest loomed around us, damp, silent, endless. 2 narrow trails disappeared into the dark. "Guess this is where the fun begins," Nico said, forcing a grin. We drew lots, and I ended up last in line, trailing the group down the right-hand path. The air was thick with the scent of wet earth and rotting leaves. Each step crunched softly beneath our shoes. Somewhere deeper in the woods, branches cracked and something small skittered away. I froze and glanced back, heart hammering. The others kept walking, laughing nervously under their breath. None of them had heard it. "Adrian, you good back there?" Sam's voice cut through the darkness, her tone steady but tight. "Yeah," I said, forcing my voice not to shake. "Just thinking about how dark it is out here." Miles let out a thin, nervous laugh. "If something jumps out, I'm gone." No hesitation. "Same." Nico smirked, though his voice carried an edge. "But hey, we'll survive, right?" I nodded, pretending I believed that. Every sound, the creak of branches, the whisper of wind, seemed amplified, alive. I told myself it was just animals, the forest shifting with the breeze. But deep down something felt wrong. Then suddenly the trees opened up. We stepped into a clearing so wide it stole my breath. It looked like an abandoned golf course swallowed by time. Tall grass, uneven ground, the tree line circling it like an audience of shadows. And there, at the far end, stood a house, its roof sagged. Windows boarded, door sealed shut with splintered planks. A white couch sat half visible through a shattered window, draped in yellowed plastic, as if someone had fled mid-move and never returned. "Let's just check it out," Lucas said, already sweeping his flashlight toward the structure. "Wait, stop!" Sam's voice cracked like a whip. We froze. "What?" Lucas whispered. She didn't answer. She just pointed. Across the clearing, near the edge of the trees, something moved. A figure. Tall, pale, sickly thin. It wasn't walking or running. It was dancing, twisting, spinning, swaying in a rhythm that made my stomach knot. Its movements were sharp and wrong, like a puppet with tangled strings. "What the?" Lucas breathed. Jordan squinted. "I don't see anything." "Are you messing with me?" "No," Sam hissed. "It's right there." The instant she said it, the figure froze mid-step. Then slowly, its head turned toward us. For a moment, no one breathed, then it charged. "Run!" Lucas screamed. We bolted, crashing through underbrush, branches clawing at our faces. Cold air tore down my throat like glass. Behind us came the pounding of feet, or something that sounded like feet. Fast, jerky, inhuman. "What is it?" Jordan yelled, voice breaking. "What the hell's happening?" My flashlight beam bounced wildly, catching fleeting glimpses. A flash of bone-white skin, limbs flailing at impossible angles. A face that wasn't really a face at all. We reached the cars, lungs burning. Doors slammed, locks clicked. Miles's hands trembled so hard he dropped the keys twice before getting the engine started. "Everyone okay?" Sam's voice was barely a whisper. "I think so," I gasped, still staring into the trees. But it was coming for us. No one spoke after that. Lucas hit the gas and we didn't stop until streetlights reappeared and the glow of town washed over us. We pulled over in silence, each of us shaking, staring at one another as if to confirm we were still real. No one could find words. Whatever we'd seen back there wasn't human. Or if it was, it wasn't anymore. Weeks passed, but sleep never really came back. Every creak in my dorm room made me jolt awake. Every whisper of branches outside sent my pulse racing. During lectures, I'd find my mind drifting. Back to the clearing, the pale figure, the way it moved. Then one morning, months later, I read a story in the Suffolk Sentinel. A missing person had been found wandering near Miller's Hollow, alive but incoherent, rambling about the dancer. The description was vague, but the timing was too perfect to dismiss. We didn't talk about it much after that. But every time someone mentioned Miller's Hollow, that same cold chill returned. Years rolled on. We scattered, different cities, different lives, but occasionally one of us would drop a message into the group chat. "Remember Miller's Hollow?" Nico would type. "That really happened, right?" "Yes," we'd all reply. Always yes, even now I avoid that stretch of road. Sometimes I dream of the clearing, the sagging house, the moonlight on wet grass, that pale figure twirling silently as though waiting for us to come back. In those dreams, it always stops mid-dance and looks straight at me, and I wake up with that same old feeling, the one that says it's still out there, watching, waiting. No one else ever reports seeing it. Maybe it only shows itself to certain people, the ones foolish enough or curious enough to wander too close. Whatever it is, it's still in those woods. A silent predator, and we were lucky. That night could have ended differently. One of us could have stayed behind, swallowed by the dark. Sometimes when I'm alone, I think about going back just once to see if it's still there. But deep down, I already know the truth. Some doors should never be reopened. Some horrors should only be remembered, never revisited. Because Miller's Hollow still waits and it remembers. I never imagined that moving to New York would end like this. When I first packed my bags in Ohio, I thought I was chasing a chance at something bigger, not walking straight into a nightmare. My hometown, Fairview, was the kind of place that barely existed on a map. Everyone knew everyone, gossip was currency, and the only thing that ever changed was the weather. I'd spent 27 years under the same roof my parents bought before I was born. My dad had retired after 35 years at the steel plant, and my mom still worked at the town library, shelving the same books I used to check out in middle school. I loved them, but Fairview had begun to feel like a coffin with curtains. I'd always been the quiet one, observant, drawn to details, happiest with a sketchbook in hand. Drawing had been my escape since childhood, so it felt natural when I drifted into design work. For years I picked up freelance gigs, trying to make rent, trying to matter. Then one morning I got an email that made my heart race. A Manhattan-based design firm wanted me as a junior graphic designer. It wasn't the dream job, but it was a door. Finally, a door opening. When I told my parents, my mother cried softly, the way she does when she's proud but scared. My father just grunted, then said, "New York will eat you alive, Danny, but maybe that's what you need." Uncle Frank, my dad's younger brother, offered to help me move. He had this old box truck from his construction days and insisted on driving me so some big city scam artist doesn't rob you blind. We left Ohio late Friday, headlights cutting through the black ribbon of highway. We ate at fluorescent-lit diners, drank too much coffee, and took turns cursing the GPS. By dawn Saturday, the skyline appeared through the windshield like a jagged dream. Queens, my new home. The apartment wasn't glamorous, nothing like the glass-walled studios I'd scrolled through online. But at $1,150 for a one-bedroom in a weathered brownstone on West Hahn Street, it felt like I'd gotten away with something. The building was old but solid, its brick faded and its iron railings cold to the touch. The street was alive, mothers pushing strollers, the smell of bagels and car exhaust hanging in the air, the hum of distant traffic. I told myself it was safe enough. Frank parked by the curb, slapped the steering wheel, and grinned. "Well, here it is, your palace." I laughed, but my stomach fluttered. We'd just started unloading when a voice called out behind us. "Hey, you just moving in?" I turned. A young woman stood on the sidewalk, half lit by the morning sun. Long dark hair tucked under a faded scarf, pale skin that almost glowed against it. Her eyes lingered on me a second too long, curious, but something else. And her smile, polite, unmoving, like a photograph that had learned to breathe. Yeah," I said, steadying a table against my hip. "Just got here today. She didn't move closer, just watched. "I'm Daniel," I added, forcing a friendly tone. That's when she smiled again, slightly wider this time, though her eyes didn't follow, and said nothing. That night, exhaustion hit hard. The city's noise felt foreign, too alive, seeping through the old windows. I must have dozed off sometime after midnight, but when I woke, my heart was pounding. I'd been dreaming of something, faces, whispering, but it slipped away the second my eyes opened. I sat up, breath shallow, skin damp with sweat. The apartment was still, silent except for the radiator ticking. And then I noticed it. The bathroom door was open. I always closed it, I always closed it. From the darkness came the sound of breathing, wet, ragged, human, yet wrong. My pulse hammered in my ears. I turned toward the noise, every nerve in my body pulling tight. The front door was still locked, the chain in place. No one could have gotten in. No one. I grabbed the kitchen knife from the counter, my knuckles white around the handle. The air felt heavier as I crept forward. Each step on the old hardwood groaned beneath me. The breathing grew louder, thick, animalistic, with a damp hiss between each exhale, like something salivating in the dark. My throat went dry. I reached out for the bathroom light switch, fingertips brushing the wall. That's when I felt it. A rush of hot, moist air against my hand. A breath that wasn't mine. I jerked and slammed the switch. Light flooded the tiny bathroom. Empty. The shower curtain hung still. The drain gleamed. The mirror reflected only my pale, trembling face. And then, 3 sharp knocks at my door. Not a friendly knock. A rattling, hollow one that made the hinges vibrate. Heart pounding. I ran to the door and yanked it open. No one. Only the quiet hum of the hallway light. Then I saw it, etched into the wood at eye level. A cross. Carved roughly, deep enough that splinters jutted out. The police came 20 minutes later. One officer took a half-hearted look, scribbled something on his pad. "Probably a prank," he said with a shrug. "Keep your door locked." Then they were gone. That evening I walked home from the corner store under a bruised sky, clutching a bag of instant noodles and aspirin. That's when I heard a voice behind me. "You look sad," she said softly. "Do you need help?" It was her, the girl from the sidewalk. Same scarf, same too perfect smile. Something inside me snapped. I dropped the bag, grabbed her shirt collar. "What do you want from me?" "Leave me the hell alone!" Her eyes didn't flinch. Her smile didn't move. "Don't worry," she whispered. "You're getting closer. Soon you'll be happy." "I'll kill you," I hissed. "Do you hear me?" Sir." "Let her go," a voice shouted. I blinked. A crowd had gathered, strangers glaring. "You're hurting her," someone yelled. Then they surged, fists, boots, pain exploding in waves. I curled on the sidewalk, coughing blood, while the girl stood just beyond them, calm, still smiling as chaos swallowed me. That night, I limped back to my apartment and collapsed against the wall, ribs throbbing. My pocket shifted. Something moved inside. I reached in, then screamed. It was a hoof, blackened, shriveled, reeking of rot and sulfur. The size of a child's hand. I hurled it across the room. It hit the floor with a wet slap. After that, time broke. Days bled into nights. The smell, thick, choking, never left. My food spoiled. The internet cut out. I stopped leaving. When I peered through the curtains, dozens of people stood below on the sidewalk. Sometimes 20, sometimes 50. Always the same smiles, always staring up. The goat-headed man stopped hiding in my dreams. Now he lived in the edges of mirrors and window reflections in the corner of my sight. His breath rasped against my ear no matter where I stood. I tried calling my mother once. The moment she answered, my throat locked. I hung up before she could say my name. I couldn't drag them into this. Now as I write this, my hands shake so hard the keys blur. My body feels hollowed out, emptied. I haven't eaten in days, but hunger doesn't matter anymore. The breathing in the bathroom never stops. The carved cross on my door has split nearly through the wood. If I disappear, if you never hear from me again, know that they came for me. The girl, the man, the watchers, the goat-headed thing that waits. I only pray it ends quickly. I used to think I knew what loneliness meant, but New York taught me the real definition. My name's Marcus Hale. I came to the city at 24, suitcase in one hand, cheap guitar case in the other, and a reckless belief that I could carve my name into something bigger than the rusted Pennsylvania town I'd been desperate to escape. That place was nothing but diners that never closed, factories that never reopened, and people who waited their whole lives to die. My father had already drunk himself into the dirt by then. My mother drifted through her days in a fog of cigarettes and medication, the television always murmuring in the background like a sedative. Staying there felt like suffocating. So I left. New York was supposed to be freedom, bars full of music, people who understood hunger and ambition, nights that meant something. Instead, I wound up in a warehouse in Queens, graveyard shifts, spine screaming, paycheck barely enough to keep a roof over my head. My guitar gathered dust in the corner of my shoebox studio while I slept through the daylight, waking to the sound of neighbors fighting through paper-thin walls and sirens leaking through my cracked window. Most days I stared at the ceiling and wondered if I'd made the wrong choice. Still, I told myself that struggle was part of the deal, that everyone in New York bled a little before they made it. But lately, the city felt different. It wasn't just exhausting anymore. It was alive. It watched. It waited. It devoured. That October night was swallowed in fog, the kind that clings to streetlights and smears the world into yellow and gray. I clocked out around 2:00 a.m., shoulders aching, throat raw from the dust, and caught the F train back into Manhattan. The subway car rattled through the tunnels half empty, its flickering fluorescent lights stuttering like dying stars. Across from me, a man in a shredded coat muttered to himself, rocking gently, clutching a brown paper bag like it contained the last piece of his soul. At the far end, a woman scrolled through her phone, her eyes hollow, her face lit ghost white by the screen. Then a sound, soft, angelic. Piano music. It stopped me cold. For a moment it calmed me, cutting through the hum of the train. I followed it down the hallway of my building later that night, stopping at the door where the melody seeped out in trembling notes. I hesitated, then knocked gently. The music stopped instantly. A chair scraped. Footsteps padded toward the door. Then a woman's voice, fragile, breaking, whispered through the wood. "Why are you out of your apartment? It isn't safe out there. The only protection is inside, but it's too late now." My stomach turned. "What are you talking about? Too late for what?" Her voice cracked into quiet sobs. "He's coming, Marcus. And there's nothing you can do. None of us can. He decides where we go, up above or down below." I froze. "Who's coming? Who are you talking about?" "You'll see," she whispered. "None of us remember how we got here. None of us ever do. But once he comes, there's no running." Before I could speak again, the building shuddered. The floor vibrated. The walls quaked like a subway roaring past. A metallic hum rose beneath my feet, sharp and grinding, like chainsaws tearing into steel. The woman screamed. And then the hallway lights went out. I ran blindly as the piano's song warped into a chorus of shrieks, doors slamming open, men and women wailing behind them, the whole building trembling as something unseen moved through it. Then a door to my left exploded open, wood splintering against the wall. From the blackness beyond stepped a creature, tall, impossibly thin, its skin the color of ash smeared with soot. It moved like smoke, gliding forward on limbs too long to belong to anything human. 5 black eyes blinked independently across its face, wet and glistening, like marbles dredged from oil. Its arms tapered into curling claws instead of hands, each one glinting faintly in the dark. Its lipless mouth peeled back, revealing rows of teeth, brown, cracked, yet strong enough to split bone. The thing fixed those 5 eyes on me and I froze, lungs locking tight in my chest. Then it reached out. The claws wrapped around my wrist with crushing force. Pain seared up my arm, white-hot and blinding. I gasped, but before I could even cry out, a voice vibrated through my skull. "Marcus, hello." The words didn't echo in the air, they reverberated inside me, as though they were being spoken directly into my bones. "I am your carrier." My knees buckled, but it didn't let me fall. Its grip tightened just enough to keep me upright. "Do not run," it said, the tone even, almost kind. "If you come with me willingly, I will not hurt you." I wanted to scream, to tear free, to deny what I was seeing. But something about that voice, its steady rhythm, pressed down on my will like chains. My head nodded without my permission. Slowly, it released my wrist. What is this place? I managed to whisper, my voice trembling. The creature, the carrier, tilted its head, its 5 eyes blinking out of sync. Some stay longer, it murmured. Some only minutes. This is not for everyone. But for you, it is time we walk down the endless hallway. It turned, and I followed because I couldn't do anything else. We moved past countless doors, each numbered, each humming faintly as though something alive waited behind them. At one, a golden light seeped through the cracks beneath. From inside came laughter, children playing, birdsong, leaves rustling in a soft breeze. The sound made my chest ache. What's in there? I asked, voice barely a whisper. Not for you, the carrier said flatly, never looking back. We walked on. At another door, screams rattled through the wood, desperate humans scraping at the edges of sanity. Voices cried, pleaded, clawed for help. That, the carrier said, pausing for the briefest moment, is where some remain forever. Finally, we stopped before a stairwell. The number 4355 glowed faintly on the door, the paint uneven and cracked. Beyond it, nothing. Just darkness, vast and bottomless. The carrier lifted a claw and pointed. This is your stop. My chest constricted. Why? Because you made a mistake. My pulse hammered. What mistake? What did I do? Think, it said softly. Apartment 23, the bottle. The pills. The mirror with no reflection. My thoughts fractured, snapping open like shards of glass. Images flooded back in jagged flashes. The whiskey bottle tipped over. The pills spilled across the sink. The rat in the corner foaming at the mouth. The shower running with no one inside. A woman screaming outside my door. Words I hadn't listened to, begging someone to stop, to let her go. The carrier's voice slid through the air like a blade. Now remember? My hands trembled as I fumbled my phone from my pocket. The screen glowed. A message stared back at me, written by my own hand but forgotten, dated hours ago. To Sarah, I'm sorry for everything. I hope my absence doesn't burden you. I couldn't take this existence anymore. Please take care of Mom. Goodbye. No, I whispered, shaking my head, tears stinging my eyes. No, I didn't mean... The last audio file on my phone began to play on its own. My own voice echoed from the tiny speaker. Calm, hollow, recounting every thought I'd had since I woke up tonight. Every word. Every step. The carrier's eyes shimmered like oil. You see? You're already gone. What walks with me now is only the shadow of what you were. Tears blurred everything. Please, I choked. I didn't mean it. Its claws extended toward the stairwell. All must go where they belong. The screams from below rose up the stairs, countless voices crying, echoing into the dark. My knees shook. Behind me, the hallway stretched into forever. Doors sealed tight, piano silent, city erased. There was nowhere else to go. I took a breath that felt